I think you take criticism and self seriously if you remember the person on the other side just wants to be happy, and it's kind of like knowing their weakness. You know, people just want to be safe, have money, have love, and they have anxiety over this. So I think when you put yourself out there and share your insecurities and they jump on them, it's easy to just know, especially in like these manosphere spaces, that these are just like hurt people. And I know who hurt you is a joke, but it's just true when people are constantly like dedicated and worshiping a confirmation bias and keeping up with charts and watching the same YouTubers to repeat the same points, which could be true, but at this point, some of it is just too. It's redundant because it is now focusing on the future. And it's one thing to evaluate the past and comment on the present, but when these videos are trying to predict what's going to happen and are like focus on the future in the most, it's not even a red pill anymore, it's like a black pill way of willing like emotional disaster. And it's just losery, because even if you're right, like, I don't think that will make you happy either. So I can't let myself feel insulted or take critiques too seriously when I know people are just like not emotionally sound. And we're just so basic. We're easily distracted when our lives are great. So if you were ever to be criticized, it's like if that person's life was so good, they shouldn't even know you exist. Like, you shouldn't even be on this corner to this point or staying for a long time unless you are so happy. Like, would a happy person continuously binge material about the downfall of other people's lives? I think the only people that end up doing that are those that get a financial incentive. So I guess that's like a slight pass for them, but everyone else is kind of just a loser. And that's not even me like looking down on them, because I'm also a loser in my own ways, and it's just like, okay, I think being a loser is human. It's just human. Just like the anxiety of being human. I can't remember if I mentioned this in another video or if I just never posted a video that mentioned this, but like the assumption that you have to get to the top to realize that there's nothing else, or to realize like the true essence of life. Like watching some videos and people having their career and having no debt and working out, looking their best, having a good social life, but not being married and having kids, or basically getting to the top of the mountain and being like, oh, like this is it. And then in the same breath, like insulting people that don't have as much, and basically assuming that like unless you get to the top, you can't see that there's nothing there. And I feel like that's one reason why I have been less inclined to reach goals or be super fast at them, is because I know that reaching the top of the mountain, that there's like nothing else to go for. So I think in some ways I've saved bits and pieces of novelty, maybe on accident or maybe on purpose, just have to look forward to. It's like some people can't fathom you coming to the same epiphanies or realizations as them, but without half of the work, or working in a different way, because I've been very mental in my life and spiritual, so I think I've reached some conclusions that very reality, physically like focused people get to, and they think their success is the only thing that can unlock this like grand realization. But some people aren't successful, and we already know what they know. Or it's just like the general irony of some people being very successful and doing everything right but not getting the family, and then some people just doing everything wrong but like getting the family and having a legacy as worthless as the legacy might be. It's still like the evolutionary success of continuing their DNA bloodline. So I think I'm considering the difference between being stoic and being lazy, and these people that are successful and then get into stoicism. I think it's like a big secret, and that they're so cool because they're at this level of self improvement. But wouldn't like the greatest stoics kind of just appear as lazy people because they take life for what it is and they just keep moving and are less emotional? I think because we have this appearance of the Stoics, like I can't even remember if this is like Roman or Greek. I'm sorry, but like the statues being so fit that in your mind you think like, oh, this is the optimum human, and like these are really like fit, smart guys. And you could just never imagine a Stoic being fat and dumb. It's basically the bell curve graph with the retard on the left and the monk on the right. So something I've thought about, which is also not like a grand revelation, but for years I would kind of think, and I think because I journaled, so I had like the evidence in front of me, where it was basically like I would only have 10 thoughts, like 10 consistent thoughts in my head, and like 10 consistent goals that I kept pushing off. And something about this, or last year's goal for really minimalizing to the point of like needing it and curating style. It also made me question my diet, and maybe it's just because I'm getting older and I'm remembering how I saved money and how the money I saved was spent. I'm really, well, I've always been financially like conscious, but I'm really wanting to step it up there because I've broken attachment with things, and it's not that I loved things, it's just I would buy things and not return things because most of them are bought online. So when you don't really understand your taste, or you're influenced, or you're online and you get way too many ideas for a person, then you spend because you want to try, which I think is fine. But you know, if you continue being irresponsible, then it all just becomes a waste, and then you learn a lesson in which it's like I didn't actually need any of that. So I think the lesson is worth going through in order to do better, but I didn't really think it would change my psyche so much, or it would influence other factors of my life. Like, now I'm considering mental minimalism, and I feel like deleting my social media accounts and spending more time on YouTube to get everything I thought that I wanted to watch down. You kind of realize, like, all the 1,000 videos I watched later, out of them, maybe like 900 were just for enjoyment, for entertainment purposes, because I was curious if a song would sound good or like a movie looked good. There's very rarely like things that are helpful, and then out of those things that are helpful that you can use, can you remember them for the time you need them? Like, I would like some craft videos of how to make a rug or some kind of like sewing loops, but I don't have those tools yet, and I don't actually feel like can focus on those things yet. I think to an extent it's sometimes good to surround yourself with kind of aspirational type of things, even if you're not ready to commit, just to keep it in like your mental atmosphere, and eventually you can pull it out. You just have to let go of what you're spending time on currently, and then you'll transition to use it for those new hobbies. But I was realizing like how bloated I felt in obligation to my own interests, and how I just don't feel like liking things right now. And I find no use in most knowledge. And I'm just starting to feel like really stupid, but it's not in a way that I'm trying to overcome. It's like because I'm over the things that I like, I feel like I'm back to having no knowledge at all. And I don't think I've ever been like particularly very smart. It's like my intellect comes through observation and open-mindedness, and I'm good at connecting things, but I, like most people, kind of judge intellect by the ability to do problems in your head or to recite like clear, detailed, accurate history. And I think focusing on my financial situation and the things I want to save for, I've been I've been appreciating peace more, and I feel like there's a way to live life that's almost like the year that I took off, but like obviously still working. Like, I think, a big way I can get peace is just by having all my bills covered again, which I have had before, but this I'm really appreciating that fact. Because even though I have lived relatively debt free in my life, I've never really appreciated it that much. Uh, I've compared myself to my family members, but I've never really thought how rare that is and how much people my age spend or fight more than they can chew. I'm thinking about the capacity we have for everything, and how I can maybe have 10 thoughts in a day, and I only really need like 20 outfits in a year, maybe throughout like all the seasons, and we only eat like 10 to 15 meals because we're just creatures of habit, and you are the sum total of the 5 people you know, even if that's not true, like the 10 people you know, whatever it is. Your hobbies are limited. You might watch 2 movies a week or something like that. When you or if you curate each of these factors, these aspects or roles in your life, like you can achieve such simplicity that you basically already have. It's just that you pretend you don't have it and then you're stressed. And you think there are like all these options and there's all these recipes and things to know, but you should already have majority of your taste by your 20s, and then you can just be honest. So I'm going to like consciously create and write down like a menu, like a diet of meals I want to transition to incorporate. Because right now, like the grocery store, the grocery has always been somewhat overwhelming, and like everything always felt too big to make, too complicated. So I've learned some things over the years, but I have to admit I've grabbed more convenient frozen dinners than I should have. So I know this is accomplishable because I only need like 10 or 15 meals and snacks to get through the year, because I've rotated food like that anyway. It just hasn't been food that I've made sometimes. And when I think about how the capacity is inevitable, it's like we're born with the limits, so it shouldn't be stressful because the limits are already made. It's just a matter of curating them. Like I don't have to force myself to only eat 10 to 15 different types of meals or only wear 20 outfits. It just already happens naturally, but it's a matter of me really respecting that and curating that for my own benefit, instead of letting it go wild and pretending and lying to say that I have more room to be different and that I'm really going to get to all these things. Like even the movies that I've bookmarked because I've been interested in, I question like how much am I interested in it, because when I go to the watch list to pick out something, I like hesitate because it feels like so much work to get into. So maybe I just have to start rewatching things that I already know that I like, because I don't really rewatch things because there's like benefits and unwinding, and I know that I'm not good if I stick in my head all day. So I almost use entertainment as a way to ground myself sometimes. It's best when I have like a TV show, but I really don't feel like being invested in TV. There's just something that feels disgusting about that right now, and that's fine. Like I've had my fill, so I really want to get into more physical activities this year. And I've already written down like all my ideas, and I've even considered making like my own directory and like searching every movie theater or roller skating rink or ski place, things like that, and like typing out, copy and pasting the three that are nearest, and then just creating a directory like that instead of having to continuously search online. Like I'm looking for less reasons to be online, and I'm trying to get everything done quickly so I can just be off my phone. I just binged so much makeup stuff, and it'll probably settle down to like 10 products, including skincare. So I just think there's no way in not being peaceful if things are this simplified. And it's not in like an autistic way. Like maybe we should have learned to live like this to begin with, and then people would be less stressful and make less commitments because they would know the roles of everything in their life. So I haven't been interested in knowledge or thinking. I think people try to think too much. It's like a jack of all trades, master of none. I think most people, maybe they're not as smart as they think they are, or they think thinking can make them smart or something like that, but we don't use half of what we know. Or maybe all the thinking is just to be interesting, and to be interesting to who? I feel like that's a huge spot for obligation. Like, if I learned nothing new and I just continued with what I know right now, I would completely survive. I'd probably survive until death. And I think what makes you get online to learn more, especially for me, is I'm always looking for the best answer because I know there's the best answer. Like thinking about the food I'm going to have, and one thing on my list is asparagus. So I'm like, should I YouTube best asparagus, best frozen asparagus? And just in case I can't always afford like what's fresh at the grocery store, I'm fine with that frozen vegetables. How to cook asparagus? How many asparagus recipes do I need? And that's how you get sucked in. And that's just one downfall of society right now, is just the constant linking and constant thinking that there's a best. And also one reason I want to get offline majority of the time is because I think I just miss like the role of God. Even when I didn't necessarily believe in a God, I knew that there's just this ever present chance and fate. And fate can just be like, what happens, happens. And I think the more time I spend online, is the more I've redirected myself and try to be in control. And what I get into is obligations and like a watch list that weigh me down. And I just miss the spontaneity and the mystery of life in itself and myself. And to think that I could be in public and I run into someone and become friends with them, and it's serendipity. And relieving myself of the responsibility of making life. Like, I can just be myself and I'm already in life. So I can be myself and you walk through life and you experience life that way. I don't have to make every decision to the T. It's like when you're in your head too much, you just become God too much. And I don't think that's, it's just like unromantic and boring, because then I create too many rules and standards, and it just feels like inauthentic in a way. It's too much algorithm. I kind of feel like right now my lack of tension, lack of interest is exactly what men like. And they just want someone that's focused on like looking nice and has no ideas. And I'm like, I am so ready to be that. I want a break from ideas. I don't think ideas are that important, but my lack of like ego, or there's a feeling of like wanting marriage, but also I think people that crave a relationship, a lot of them are just, they think they're missing something. And it can only be gained that way. And I feel like I'm too peaceful to disturb myself in the matters of convincing or auditioning, or making someone struggle to audition back. And if it's not seamless, if it's not immediate, it would just feel weird to me. Because I think there's baggage in just like human connection. And it's not necessarily like bad things happen to you, it's just your idolized version or what you think a relationship should be based off of what you've watched or seen, what's on said, and nothing's like organically just two people. Two people without the ghosts of former relationships or dreams. I feel like I'm just mentally retiring. And I don't mind that. I think it's nice to enjoy peace. I was kind of dozing off because I think it's good to, when you can meditate or just kind of doze off when you're between like sleeping and not sleeping and feeling that sense of peace in that time where it's like consciously feeling the peace instead of being so peaceful you just fall asleep and you like miss all the peace because you were asleep for it. I think that's like one thing I've really just been enjoying is like consciously feeling the peace. And not feeling like there's like a huge rush to get to anything or urge or there's an answer because I've already done all the spiritual and like the spiritual work. I would say religious work, but I mean I kind of interchange them, but I don't actually know religions like that, so just the idea that there's an answer or there's a God or what God is for. I think that's also why people that are aiming for success or in this manosphere think you're not allowed to have the answer until you've accumulated like so many achievements. Like you're fucking a video game character. They're just like, no, you're lazy, and only when you do as much as I have, then you know that there's nothing. It's like, okay, if you have already been in search for God and reason, like me, then you already knew there was nothing. And I didn't have to do any of that stuff to know that. It's so funny. You can't know there's nothing until you get an engineering degree. It's also just interesting because it's an absence of care and an absence of liking things that is so different from depression. It's so. What's the journey guy's name? The journey, the journey, the journey. It's like the man's journey. The 13th step. That guy, Joseph Campbell. It's so Joseph Campbell. But with it comes love, even. Like, I really need to tidy up. But I'm also like, this mess is temporary. And this mess is, I'm appreciating this mess because it's temporary and it's nothing. And if, when I clean up, it's gonna be nothing. I'm just, you're constantly returning to a new nothingness. And I have peace in knowing that other people just have different life journeys and there's a higher power that kind of chooses what we do, or lets us choose what we do before we come here. So I'm not like, why isn't everyone thinking this way? Or like, why don't my parents think this way? Why is my mom like that? Not like, oh, if I could just teach them how to get peace, and they would get peace. It's just not my job, and I don't think I'd be good at it. In some ways, this is all the product of everything I ever wanted. I wanted relief. Or I wanted things, but I won't be able to get them, so it's just a matter of having the perception that it didn't matter. So I didn't get the things, but I got the perception. And when you get the mindset, it doesn't matter if you did or didn't get the things. I just wanted to be free. Especially free for myself, and now I don't care about what the self is. Because I don't take it personal. And I just remind myself it's just like a funky situation. I'll be like, oh my god, I'm late for work or something, and I was just like, who's I? Like, what is work? Like, just do the thing and see how it plays out. You know, when you hear your name and it just sounds empty because you know it's not a real thing, you're not a real thing. It's just like a term, it's just for easy access, for easy reference. It's not tied to your body. Especially because people say my name wrong. I've always been like, okay, I guess I'm not a person. There's always been a barrier. There have been many barriers between me feeling like a person. One thing about me, I'm gonna die while I'm alive.